The soft hum of the cafe was comforting, like a lullaby she didn't know she needed. The faint clinking of cups, the quiet chatter of strangers, and the mellow jazz floating through the air made the little corner by the window feel safe even if her heart wasn't. Emma stirred her latte for the 5th time, watching the foam swirl into a delicate spiral that slowly disappeared into the warmth. The chair across from her sat empty, and with every tick of the clock on the cafe wall, it seemed to grow louder, heavier, and more painfully obvious. She tried not to check her phone, but the glowing screen kept pulling her attention. A message, maybe a simple "I'm on my way," would have been enough, but there was nothing. Just the old notifications she'd already read twice, and the reflection of her own face staring back at her. Her blonde hair fell neatly over her shoulders, her soft brown sweater hugged her arms, and her makeup was subtle, not too much, not too little. Her best friend Clara had said she looked perfect for this. "He's not like the others, Em," Clara had promised. "He's kind, grounded, and really wants to meet someone serious." Emma had laughed at that. Serious? She'd heard that before, but still, she had let herself believe just a little. It had been almost 2 years since her last relationship ended. A slow, painful unraveling that left her questioning her worth. She wasn't even sure why she'd agreed to this blind date in the first place. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was hope pretending to be something else. Now, sitting alone in the amber glow of the cafe lights, she felt foolish. People passed by outside the window, couples holding hands, friends laughing, someone rushing by with a bouquet of flowers, and each passing second reminded her that she was waiting for someone who probably wasn't coming. The waitress approached with a gentle smile, notebook in hand. "Would you like to order anything else, miss?" she asked kindly. Emma hesitated before shaking her head. "No, thank you. I think I'll just finish this." The waitress nodded and walked away, but not before giving her that look, the one that mixed sympathy with silent understanding. Emma managed a small smile in return, though her chest felt tight. She hated that look. She reached for her phone again, scrolling aimlessly through old messages, pretending she wasn't waiting for one that would never come. Maybe he got caught in traffic, she thought. Maybe he lost his phone. Maybe, but deep down she knew. The truth was simple and cruel. He wasn't coming. Her coffee had gone cold when she finally sighed and leaned back in her chair. The seat across from her, empty and untouched, seemed to mock her with its silence. She looked at the little tulip centerpiece in the vase on her table, a few yellow and pink blooms slightly bent at the edges, and smiled faintly. Even flowers wilt when they're left waiting too long, she thought. The bell above the cafe door chimed softly as someone walked in, and for a brief second her heart lifted. She glanced up, half hoping, half bracing herself, but it wasn't him. Just another couple finding a table, their laughter soft and effortless. She laughed quietly at herself. Get over it, Emma. Maybe the universe was telling her something, that she didn't need to keep chasing people who couldn't see her value. Maybe it was time to stop waiting. With that thought, she picked up her purse and began to stand. The chair scraped slightly against the wooden floor as she pushed it back, her movements slow and heavy. The waitress caught her eye again, offering a small nod, as if to say, "It's okay." And then, just as she was about to leave, something stopped her. A sound light, quick, and unexpected like the patter of tiny feet. She turned her head instinctively, and there they were. 2 little girls, no older than 5 or 6, stood near her table. They were identical, same golden curls, same rosy cheeks, same matching pink sweaters that looked soft as clouds. One of them held a small vase with tulips. The other clutched the hem of her sister's sleeve nervously. For a moment, Emma just stared, unsure what to say. They were so out of place among the chatter and clinking dishes, like 2 little pieces of a dream that had wandered into her reality. Then, in the softest, sweetest voice, one of the girls asked, "Are you our new mommy?" Emma froze. Her heart skipped, her mind spun. She blinked, half certain she'd misheard. What?" she managed to whisper. The girls exchanged a look, one of those silent, twin-like glances that spoke volumes before the other one nodded shyly. "Daddy said she'd be here. He said she'd be kind and pretty and wearing a brown sweater." Emma felt her stomach twist. The cafe around her seemed to fade into a blur. the sound of voices dimming into a distant hum. She looked down at her sweater, then back at the two little faces staring up at her with innocent expectation. Somewhere between confusion and curiosity, Emma slowly sat back down. Her heart was racing, but she couldn't bring herself to turn them away. Something told her deep in her chest that this moment was about to change everything. For a long moment, Emma just stared at the two girls, her mind spinning in quiet disbelief. "Sweethearts," she said softly, forcing a smile, "I think you might be mistaken. I'm not your—" Before she could finish, one of the twins gently placed the small vase on the table. It was the same kind of tulips that sat there earlier, but fresher pink and white petals, still glistening with tiny drops of water. The little girl smiled shyly. "Daddy said we should give these to you," she said, her voice filled with such innocence that it tugged at something deep inside Emma's chest. Emma blinked, her confusion only deepening. "Daddy," her heart gave a strange thump. This had to be some kind of misunderstanding, maybe a prank, maybe a coincidence. She looked around the cafe, half expecting someone to appear and explain, but no one came. The only thing she could see was the soft light reflecting off the cafe window, turning everything gold and warm. Then, as if on cue, the bell above the door chimed again. The girls turned instantly, their faces lighting up. "Daddy," they squealed, and ran toward the man who'd just walked in. Emma followed their gaze, and saw him tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a navy blue coat, and carrying the exhausted look of someone who'd been running. His dark hair was slightly tousled, and his eyes, though tired, held a quiet warmth. He looked from the twins to Emma, realization dawning across his face as he rushed over. "Oh my God," he said, catching his breath. "I am so sorry about this." Emma blinked, still seated, unsure whether to laugh or run. "It's okay, I think," she said hesitantly, a small nervous smile tugging at her lips. He crouched down beside the twins, resting a gentle hand on each of their shoulders. "Girls," he said firmly but softly, "this lady isn't—" But before he could finish, one of the twins interrupted, tugging on his sleeve. "But Daddy, you said she'd be here today. The lady who'd make us smile again." The man froze. The words hung in the air like something sacred, delicate, heartbreaking, and impossible to ignore. Emma's heart softened immediately. She looked at the twins, then at him, sensing the weight behind their small, innocent statement. He rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. "I think I owe you an explanation," he said finally, standing and offering her a sheepish smile. "I'm Mark, and I'm so sorry if my daughters scared or confused you." Emma smiled faintly, shaking her head. "No harm done," she said gently, though her curiosity burned. "But what exactly did they mean?" Mark sighed and glanced down at the twins, who had now taken seats beside Emma as if they'd known her forever. "Their mother passed away last year," he said quietly, voice trembling just slightly. "Since then, it's been just the three of us. I've been trying to make things normal again, but they miss her every day. I told them I was going to meet someone tonight, a friend, someone nice. I guess they misunderstood." Emma's chest tightened. The girls, blissfully unaware of their father's struggle, were giggling softly as they arranged the tulips on the table. She could see the love he had for them in the way he looked at them, gentle, protective, exhausted. "I didn't mean for this to happen," he continued, lowering his voice. "They just wanted to believe something good could happen again. I guess I didn't have the heart to correct them." Emma smiled, her heart aching. "It's okay," she said softly. "They're sweet, and I understand." Mark looked at her, surprised by the warmth in her tone. Most people would have run off by now. She laughed lightly. "Well, I was about to," she admitted, "but then your daughters showed up with tulips and a question no one could walk away from." He chuckled at that, the tension easing from his shoulders. "They have a way of doing that," he said, his gaze softening as he looked at them. The twins turned their attention back to Emma, their little faces glowing with curiosity. "Do you like pancakes?" one asked suddenly. Emma blinked, caught off guard. I do." The other twin grinned proudly. "Daddy makes them, but they're always burnt." Mark groaned. "Hey, in my defense." Emma burst out laughing, and the sound felt genuine for the first time in weeks. The cafe seemed brighter now, lighter. The empty table that once symbolized disappointment was suddenly full of laughter, of conversation, of something that felt like healing. Minutes turned into an hour without her even noticing. The twins told her about school, their favorite cartoons, and how they used to pick flowers for their mom. Mark listened quietly, his expression a mix of love and loss. When Emma finally looked at him again, their eyes met, and for a brief moment, it felt as though time slowed. There was something in his gaze that mirrored her own loneliness, but also a quiet hope she hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't a date. It wasn't what she came for. But as the twins leaned their heads against her arms, giggling softly, Emma realized that sometimes the best things in life weren't planned at all. They just walked in when your heart was ready to see them. The cafe that once felt like a waiting room for disappointment now glowed with laughter and light. The empty chair across from Emma wasn't empty anymore. It was covered in cookie crumbs, a spilled bit of milk, and the restless energy of two bright little girls who had decided she was their new favorite person. Emma leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand as one of the twins, Lily, the talkative one, animatedly explained the grand adventure of rescuing a stray kitten from a tree. Her sister, Lucy, the quieter of the two, kept nodding solemnly, correcting details like a tiny historian. "No, Lily, it wasn't a tree, it was a bush. Daddy said it was too small for a tree." Mark chuckled, shaking his head. "You two argue like lawyers. They'll either save the world or rule it," Emma said with a soft smile. The way she said it, gentle, teasing, warm, made Mark glance at her longer than he meant to. There was something about her tone that felt so natural, as if she'd been part of this small, chaotic world all along. When Emma met his gaze, there was a flicker of something unspoken recognition, maybe, or the fragile beginning of hope. He quickly looked away, embarrassed by his own thoughts. Outside, the sky was blushing into twilight. The cafe windows reflected strings of golden lights from the street lamps, making everything feel dreamlike. Emma watched as the twins tried to sip cocoa from cups almost too big for their hands, their laughter echoing off the soft jazz playing in the background. It struck her this was what she'd been missing, not romance exactly, but warmth, connection, the kind that made silence comfortable and time move slower. "Do you come here often?" she asked Mark with a light laugh, realizing how cliché it sounded. He grinned. "Only when my girls convince me we need cookies for dinner." "Smart girls," Emma said. "Terrible influence." Mark joked, though the pride in his voice was impossible to miss. A quiet moment passed. Then Lily, the braver of the twins, looked up at Emma and asked with disarming honesty, "So, are you gonna come again?" Emma blinked, caught off guard. "Come again? Yeah." Lucy added eagerly, "Daddy smiles more when you're here." Mark choked on his coffee, coughing as his ears turned red. "Girls," Emma couldn't help but laugh, her heart melting. "That's very sweet of you," she said, placing a gentle hand on Lucy's. "But maybe I should ask your daddy if he wants me to come again." Mark raised his eyebrows, still flustered. He stammered, then finally exhaled with a sheepish grin. "I think we'd all like that." The twins clapped their hands excitedly, as if sealing the deal themselves. Time slipped away quietly after that. They talked until the cafe began to empty, until chairs were stacked and the barista started wiping counters. Emma hadn't realized how late it was until she saw the reflection of the moon in her cold coffee. Mark stood, helping the girls into their tiny coats, each one with a patch shaped like a bunny. He reached for the tulip vase still sitting on the table, the one the girls had brought to her, and offered it to Emma. "You should keep it," he said softly. "They wanted you to have it." Emma hesitated, then accepted it carefully. "They're beautiful," she whispered. "They're their mom's favorite," he said quietly, almost to himself. "The girls pick them every spring." Her chest tightened at the tenderness in his voice. "She must have been wonderful." "She was," he said, his eyes softening. "But I think she'd want me to keep trying for them." The words hung between them, full of loss but also courage. Emma nodded slowly, her throat thick. "You're doing better than you think, Mark." He smiled faintly. "I'm trying." When they stepped outside, the air was cool and smelled faintly of rain. The city was alive with soft, light-glowing signs, passing cars, distant laughter. Lucy held Emma's hand on one side, Lily clutched her father's on the other. They stood together for a moment, none of them quite ready to say good-bye. "Will you come next time?" Lily asked again, her small face tilted up toward Emma. Emma knelt so she could look them in the eye. "Only if you promise to bring more tulips." "Deal," the girls shouted in unison, their giggles echoing into the night. Mark smiled, really smiled this time, without hesitation. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what?" she asked. "For showing up," he said simply. As they walked away, Emma watched them until they disappeared around the corner, the tulip vase pressed gently to her chest. She turned back toward the cafe, the lights flickering warmly behind her, and smiled. The chair that had once felt like a symbol of loneliness now meant something entirely different. It wasn't empty anymore. Not really. Some people meet love on purpose. Others find it waiting in the most unexpected places, sometimes in a cup of cold coffee, a child's laughter, and two little girls who walk in asking, "Are you our new mommy?"